What if I told you that everything you've been fed by the media about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry could be nothing more than an illusion, a carefully constructed narrative, hiding something much darker, much deeper beneath the surface? What if their latest public display wasn't about charity, love, or even family, but about something much more sinister? You've seen the headlines, their PR stunts, their so-called revelations, and their attempts to paint themselves as the saviors of the world. But is that really the truth? Or is there something else they're hiding, something never before revealed to the public eye? Imagine this, a power couple, desperate to maintain relevance, manipulating every moment, every appearance, and yes, even their children, to create the perfect image. But behind the glitz, the glam, and the staged photo shoots, is there a growing darkness that no one dares to speak about? The truth about their behavior at the Invictus Games, their constant need for media attention, and their calculated use of emotional trauma as a PR tool. This isn't just a story about celebrities. This is a tale about power, manipulation, and how far someone will go to keep their empire intact, no matter the cost. You may think you know what's going on, but the truth has been buried for so long. You'll be shocked at what's about to come to light. Are they truly the champions of kindness and empathy they claim to be? Or are we all just pawns in their game of power, fame, and influence? Stay tuned, because what you're about to discover will make you question everything you thought you knew about Meghan and Harry. Keep watching, and let's uncover the truth together, piece by piece. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single moment of this unraveling mystery. Let's step back for a moment and examine what the media has been feeding us. We've all seen the headlines, right? Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, once beloved figures in the royal family, now transformed into the media's favorite couple in the spotlight. Their every move is covered, scrutinized, and analyzed by tabloids and news outlets around the world. But is what we're seeing really the full story? Or are we only getting a carefully curated version that hides something far more complex? We're told that Harry and Meghan are the champions of social justice. They stand for something bigger, something important. They've used their platform to advocate for mental health, equality, and environmental sustainability. They even built their own foundation, Archwell, with promises to make the world a better place. On the surface, these seem like noble causes. The media loves to portray them as saviors of sorts, fighting for the voiceless and taking on the systems that have oppressed people for centuries. But is that the whole truth? Is that the real reason they've chosen to step out of the royal spotlight and into a new world of celebrity and activism? Is it truly about helping others, or is there a much deeper motivation at play? After all, what Harry and Meghan have created since their departure from the royal family is nothing short of a global brand. Every speech, every appearance, every charity event feels meticulously crafted to maintain their relevance, and dare I say, their income. It's not just activism, it's branding. And branding requires a story, an image, and, most importantly, a product to sell. Think about it. They've turned their lives into content. Documentaries, interviews, books, and endless photo ops. We've been shown endless footage of Harry talking about his mother, Diana, and the pain of losing her. Meghan shares her struggles with mental health, her feelings of being an outsider in the royal family, and her desire to raise awareness about important causes. But at what point does the message become muddled with the medium? Does their emotional outpouring serve a greater purpose? Or is it just the latest episode in a carefully scripted series? This narrative has been sold to us as a story of redemption. We're meant to believe that Harry and Meghan's departure from the royal family was a brave, bold step towards finding freedom and fighting for what they believe in. But have we ever stopped to ask, is this story as genuine as it appears? Could it be that beneath the noble causes and the heartfelt speeches, there's something more self-serving at play? Here's where things start to get murky. If we really look closely at their actions, let's say, for example, their recent appearance at the Invictus Games, does it all seem as altruistic as the media claims? At first glance, it's easy to believe that they're simply there to support the athletes, to be advocates for those who have served and sacrificed. But when you dig a little deeper, you start to see cracks in the picture-perfect image. Take Meghan's interaction with the children at the games, for instance. On the surface, it was a moment of kindness, right? A motherly figure engaging with children. But when you watch closely, it doesn't feel quite right. Her smile is forced, her gestures awkward. She tries to appear natural, but there's a disconnect, a sense that this is more for the cameras than genuine concern. We all know that public appearances are part of the game, but at what point does it cross the line from genuine care to calculated performance? And let's talk about Harry for a moment. His speech at the event was filled with heartfelt emotions, but did anyone else notice the underlying message? It wasn't just about honoring the athletes, it was about him. He spoke of his own struggles, his mother's legacy, and how the Invictus Games are a symbol of his personal mission. There's a sense that Harry, even in a moment meant to honor others, always finds a way to turn it back to himself. Does this sound familiar? It should. Harry has made a career out of using his mother's legacy to drive his public narrative. And in doing so, he's created a brand that revolves around personal tragedy and emotional appeal. Now, ask yourself, why is it always about Harry's personal pain? What about the veterans? What about their stories, their struggles, and their victories? Why does the focus so often shift back to Harry and Meghan's personal lives? It's almost as if the veterans are nothing more than a backdrop to their own carefully crafted narrative. But this isn't the first time we've seen this. If we look at Harry and Meghan's past, this pattern becomes more apparent. Their entire royal exit was framed as an escape from the constraints of royal life. Yet, here they are, creating a new royal-esque empire in Hollywood, where every move is scrutinized, every gesture analyzed, and every word recorded for posterity. Does this sound like freedom? Or does it sound more like a new cage of their own making? One that keeps them at the center of the world's attention? As we dig deeper, the evidence begins to pile up. Their public personas are more than just stories. They're products, meticulously curated and crafted to build a brand. Every emotional outpouring, every act of kindness, every charitable event is calculated for maximum impact. It's a business model dressed up as activism. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet. The story is far from over. What we're seeing here may be just the beginning of a much larger picture, one that raises serious questions about the true motivations behind Harry and Meghan's actions. Stay with me, because the next part will reveal a side to their story that's been hidden in plain sight. So far, the media has fed us the idea that Harry and Meghan are brave individuals, fighting for what they believe in, standing up to the pressures of the royal family, and forging a new path for themselves. We've seen the emotional interviews, the tear-filled speeches, and the well-timed public displays of affection. But what if this story, as shiny and polished as it may seem, is hiding something much deeper? What if there are contradictions, inconsistencies, and unanswered questions that we've been led to overlook? Let's start by examining some glaring contradictions in the narrative that's been sold to us. For example, we're constantly told that Harry and Meghan are victims of a ruthless media and royal system that didn't understand them. The narrative is simple. They left the royal family to escape toxic press coverage and the stifling expectations placed on them. But here's the first problem. Why then, after escaping the royal life, are they so deeply embedded in another media circus? We're told that Harry and Meghan wanted privacy, but their lives have become an endless series of media appearances, documentaries, and interviews. Remember their Netflix documentary and Harry's memoir? If they truly wanted privacy, why keep giving the press exactly what it wants, access to their most private moments? You might think these are the actions of people trying to live quietly, but the truth is, it's almost as if they can't stop themselves from inserting their drama into the headlines. They wanted to escape one media spotlight, only to build an even bigger one for themselves on their own terms. Does this sound like freedom to you? Now, let's talk about the consistency, or lack thereof, in their messaging. In one breath, they claim to be advocates for mental health, equality, and social justice. They promote themselves as the modern-day figures of compassion, trying to heal a broken world. Yet, in the very next breath, we see them engaging in behavior that contradicts everything they claim to stand for. Take, for example, their recent actions at the Invictus Games. The Invictus Games, as Harry himself has said countless times, is a space created to honor wounded veterans, people who have sacrificed their bodies for their countries. But what do we see at this year's Games? A public spectacle of Meghan trying to appear as the perfect mother, yet failing to engage authentically with children, and Harry using the platform to talk about his personal struggles and family history. What about the veterans? The ones who have truly suffered? They were hardly acknowledged. The focus shifted, once again, to the Sussexes' personal brand, an exhausting pattern that undermines the very cause they supposedly support. And let's not overlook the contradictions in their portrayal of parenthood. Meghan often presents herself as a hands-on mother, a woman who is deeply involved in her children's lives. But we've never really seen it. Think about it. The couple rarely shows us any real moments with their children. In fact, when was the last time you saw them at a public event with their kids? Sure, we've been shown a few curated images here and there. But let's be honest, these aren't the raw, unfiltered moments of parenthood we're used to seeing from other public figures. Why is it that when Meghan is seen interacting with children at events, she's always distant, always awkward, never quite able to bridge that natural connection? Does she even know what it means to be a hands-on parent? Or is this just another image she's trying to sell us? Here's where the contradictions deepen. The more we hear Meghan speak about her parenting, the more it sounds rehearsed. She talks about her sacrifice and motherhood. But isn't there a noticeable lack of substance? A hands-on mother wouldn't need to make speeches about what she does for her kids, would she? Wouldn't the actions speak louder than the words? And let's not even mention the time when she had no idea what a lunchbox was in a live video. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes. A mother who's so involved in her children's daily routines should know what a lunchbox is, shouldn't she? Now, let's step back and ask the bigger question. Why is this the case? Why do they continue to push these narratives that don't quite match their actions? Could it be that the persona they've built is more important to them than the reality? Could it be that Meghan's motherhood is just another image to maintain? Another narrative to sell? The deeper we go, the more the facade starts to crumble. And the more we dig, the clearer it becomes. The Sussexes have become masters at controlling the media narrative, at playing on emotions, and using their platform to manipulate the public. They know exactly what sells: grief, trauma, and family drama. But here's the kicker. Are we truly buying into their story? Or are we just watching them rehearse their lines in front of an audience that they've created? What happens when the narrative they've so carefully constructed starts to unravel? What if the very people they claim to champion, the veterans, the everyday working people, start to see through the act? The truth is, we might just be witnessing the downfall of a carefully constructed empire. One where personal trauma is sold as a product, and where every public appearance is nothing more than another chapter in a book of lies. Before we wrap up this part, let me throw one final contradiction your way. If Harry and Meghan are truly about healing, about helping others, why do they keep dragging us back into their personal struggles? Why the endless need for sympathy? If they're the heroes in this story, why do they always play the victim? There's a fine line between being a champion of others and using their struggles as a backdrop for your own self-promotion. As we continue to peel back the layers of Harry and Meghan's carefully curated public image, something becomes strikingly clear. The narrative they've constructed is not only misleading, but maybe outright deceptive. But don't take my word for it. Let's explore some concrete evidence, analyze the data, and uncover the facts that will reveal the truth behind this couple's public persona. First, let's talk about their supposed escape from the royal family, which was widely portrayed as a bold stand for independence, freedom, and privacy. The media painted it as if they were running from the toxic environment of the royal family and the press, seeking to build their own lives away from constant scrutiny. But have you ever stopped to wonder, how genuine is this claim? If they truly wanted privacy, why would they sell every part of their lives to the highest bidder? Consider this: their multi-million-dollar Netflix deal, the deal with Spotify, and Harry's memoir Spare. Let me ask you this. Does that sound like the actions of someone seeking privacy? Or does it sound more like a carefully planned move to keep themselves in the limelight? These aren't just random media appearances. This is a business strategy. The Sussexes have become an empire built on the back of their personal stories, their trauma, and yes, their royal status. Now, let's dive into their claimed charity work, another key component of their narrative. Harry and Meghan have positioned themselves as advocates for mental health, equality, and social justice. And at first glance, that's a noble cause. However, when you look deeper into their charitable efforts, you begin to notice some disturbing trends. For example, how much of their charity work is truly hands-on, and how much is merely a branding exercise? Let's take a closer look at one of their flagship projects, Archewell Foundation. On the surface, it's presented as an organization dedicated to the advancement of causes like racial justice, mental health, and global welfare. However, when we scrutinize the foundation's impact in public reports, we see an interesting pattern emerging. There's an overwhelming amount of PR around it, but very little in the way of tangible results. Public records indicate that Archewell's financial transparency has been spotty, and the actual charitable initiatives, although grand in scope, seem to lack measurable success. Is this a genuine effort to make the world a better place? Or is it just another vehicle to boost their personal image? This isn't a new tactic. In fact, this pattern of using charitable causes as a platform for self-promotion is not unique to Harry and Meghan. Historically, we've seen other public figures use similar strategies to create the illusion of benevolence while reaping personal rewards. Take a look at their documentary. The moment it was released, it didn't just showcase the couple's charitable work. It was loaded with intimate details of their personal lives, including previously unreleased footage of their children. And who benefits from all of this? It's not the people they claim to be helping, it's Harry and Meghan, whose brand is elevated with each emotional revelation. Now, let's take a moment to look at the timing of some of their most high-profile moments. Just think about the chaos that erupted when Harry released Spare. The timing was impeccable, coming just after the Queen's passing and just before major royal events. It created an unprecedented media storm. And yet, some of the claims made in the book seemed strategically designed to make sure Harry stayed front and center in the media spotlight. Could this all be a calculated move? It's worth asking whether these personal and emotional revelations were meant to ignite outrage and garner sympathy to keep them relevant, or if it was an unfortunate consequence of unresolved trauma. Then, there's the awkwardness of their public appearances. Have you noticed how frequently Harry and Meghan seem out of touch with reality when they're in the public eye? Meghan, who's consistently portrayed as a modern woman of the people, often seems disconnected in her interactions, especially when it comes to children and families. Take the Invictus games. For instance, there she was, interacting with children, but it all felt so forced. There was no natural warmth. Instead, there were awkward pauses, uncomfortable smiles, and the constant need to perform for the cameras. Does this sound like someone who genuinely cares? Or does it sound like an actress who's playing a role? And let's not forget the landmine conversation that Harry had with his young son, Archie. According to Harry, his 5-year-old son asked about landmines, leading to a discussion about their dangers. Let's pause for a moment and think about this. A 5-year-old child, presumably living in Montecito, California, suddenly asks about landmines. Does that sound plausible to you? Is this really a question that would come up naturally in a child's mind? Or is this just another carefully crafted narrative meant to show that Harry is a thoughtful, introspective father, linking his mother's legacy to the modern world? Here's the kicker. If Harry was truly concerned about his son's mental well-being, would he really expose him to such a heavy topic at such a young age? Why not discuss something age-appropriate instead? After all, we're talking about a child who, according to reports, was reading about dinosaurs and watching cartoons. Why introduce landmines to the equation? Unless you're using it as a tool to connect the narrative back to Diana's legacy? This is where it all begins to unravel. The more we dig, the more it becomes clear that everything is a performance. The emotional appeal, the public tragedies, the carefully crafted persona of the perfect, selfless couple, it's all part of a larger strategy to maintain relevance and, ultimately, to keep the spotlight on themselves. They're not fighting for the causes they claim to be, they're fighting for their own survival in a world that no longer seems to care about them. So, let's step back and ask, is this really the truth? Or is this just another carefully curated story to keep us entertained? And more importantly, to keep us buying into their brand? What we've uncovered here is just the tip of the iceberg. As we continue to explore, you'll start to see just how deep this deception runs. And trust me, the next part is going to blow you away. Let's not ignore the fact that we've seen similar situations play out before. Take the case of other high-profile figures who've used their personal stories for political or social influence. Many have built entire careers around emotional narratives that resonate with the public. They speak about personal pain, struggles, and victories. And in doing so, they cultivate a loyal following. But underneath it all, these individuals are often backed by powerful interests, corporations, media companies, or even political movements that benefit from keeping them in the public eye. Is this what we're seeing with Harry and Meghan? Could they be playing a role in something much bigger, with far-reaching consequences? But what are the implications of this manipulation? What happens when the line between authenticity and performance becomes so blurred that we, the audience, can't tell the difference anymore? When does the personal trauma of one family get used as a tool to influence millions of people, to shift cultural perceptions, and to spark a political movement? Let's look at some of the consequences. When Harry and Meghan's narrative takes center stage, it pushes other important discussions to the background. It diverts attention from pressing issues that deserve a broader platform, like the real struggles of veterans at the Invictus Games, or the ongoing challenges of mental health advocacy. Are we being distracted by a carefully constructed soap opera, while the real issues are left in the shadows? This isn't just about one couple's journey. It's about how this journey, this brand, can change the way we perceive reality, especially when it comes to the media. And here's a question that we need to ask ourselves. What happens when the people controlling the narrative stop caring about the truth? The more Harry and Meghan feed into this media frenzy, the more they perpetuate the idea that anyone can shape their own reality as long as they have the right platform. In doing so, they not only blur the lines between what's real and what's manufactured, but they also set a dangerous precedent for future generations. They're telling us, whether intentionally or not, that image, perception, and branding are more important than authenticity. But here's where it gets even more complicated. What if this is just the beginning? What if the next phase of their plan involves using their platform to launch a political career or influence major social movements? After all, Meghan has openly talked about her political ambitions. Could their activism be a stepping stone to something much larger? Something far beyond the realm of media and charity work? As we approach the conclusion of this part, let's turn our focus to one last piece of the puzzle. We've seen how they use their trauma, their family drama, and their personal narratives to manipulate the public. But could it be that they're also using these elements to manipulate their own royal family, too? Are they subtly challenging the monarchy, forcing them to react in ways that only strengthen their own narrative? Every time the royal family remains silent or responds, it adds fuel to the fire, making Harry and Meghan appear as the victims in a never-ending battle with a heartless institution. But here's the big question we've all been avoiding. Are Harry and Meghan truly the architects of their own destiny? Or are they simply pawns in a much larger game, manipulated by forces far beyond their control? What if everything we think we know about them is just the tip of the iceberg? The game they're playing might be much more complex than we realize. And if that's the case, it's time for us to ask, who really benefits when the narrative gets spun this way? As we move towards the conclusion, keep these questions in mind. We're only beginning to scratch the surface of the true story behind Harry and Meghan. Stay tuned for what's coming next, because it's going to be a game changer. So, where does all of this leave us? After diving into the heart of the matter, it's clear that the story surrounding Harry and Meghan is far from the simple tale of love, activism, and royal rebellion that the media would like us to believe. We've peeled back the layers of their carefully curated public image, revealing a web of contradictions, strategic manipulations, and media games that make us question not just their motives, but the larger forces at play. But here's the million-dollar question. Are they the architects of their own narrative? Or are they simply part of a much larger machine, being used for purposes beyond their control? We've seen how their public actions consistently blur the line between activism and branding. Their trauma, their personal pain, their royal background, these elements are expertly woven into the very fabric of their media presence, making them an unstoppable force in today's celebrity-driven world. But at what cost? Are we, as an audience, being manipulated into buying into their story? Are we letting the emotional appeal of their narrative overshadow the real issues that deserve our attention? These are the questions we must keep asking ourselves. This story, however, is far from over. We've only begun to scratch the surface. As Harry and Meghan continue to shape their public personas, there will undoubtedly be more twists and turns. New revelations will emerge, new challenges will arise, and the media will continue to feed us the next chapter in their saga. But here's the thing. What happens when the truth starts to emerge, and the carefully crafted facade begins to crumble? Will we continue to buy into their narrative, or will we demand a deeper, more honest conversation? I'm curious to know, what do you think? Are Harry and Meghan genuinely fighting for a better world? Or is this all just a carefully orchestrated performance to maintain their relevance and power? I want to hear your thoughts, your perspectives. The floor is open for discussion, and this is far from the last time we'll be talking about them. So, make sure you don't miss any of the unfolding drama. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the next chapter. We'll be back soon with more updates, more analysis, and of course, more of the truth.